Hey, good evening. Today is February 2nd, 2017. Um, Here for the second installment here of the Reformation Profiles on African Americans. This here will be very, very brief. Sitting in McDonald's, lots of traffic, lots of background, lots of mochas being made. So I want to just do this quickly and give you this profile. Hopefully you will go to my blog site at timeforreformation.com. You can go there and you can read a little bit more about Francis Grimké. Francis Grimké is called the Minister of Justice. Francis J. Grimké was born in October 4th of 1850. His mother's name was Nancy Weston. Nancy Weston was a slave, and the father of Francis was the slave owner to whom Nancy was a slave owner too. Eventually, as Francis grew older and the master of the plantation actually died, he eventually ran away. Upon running away, he joined the Confederate Army, and he fought with them and stayed away until emancipation, to then when he returned and he went to family. A couple of things I simply want to get into about Francis J. Grimké will be simple. He emphasizes something I think is really, really important. And again, I'm not going to go over the information that I have on the blog, but please do. One of the things that I want to point out about Francis was his connection to the church. Francis, after receiving his call to the ministry, he wanted to be a lawyer. He eventually chose not to become a lawyer, and he enrolled in Princeton Theological Seminary, which upon graduating in 1878, he began ministering and pastoring at the 15th Street Presbyterian Church, except for 4 years of 1885 and 1889. Outside of those 4 years, Francis actually pastored the 15th Street Presbyterian Church for 50 years. 50 years. That was how important the church was to him. Not only that, he labored those 50 years teaching and training and equipping that particular church to the point where that church was known as one of America's most accomplished African American congregations. It was said that Grimké preached to them not just the values of scriptures, not just taught them and trained them along those lines, but he also taught them to agitate for civil rights until justice is done. So he had a very, very balanced ministry. Actually, in many respects, it was said that Grimké was actually not known to be an activist. But yet, as you look at his life and look at his ministry, he actually was highly involved in the development of the African American. As a matter of fact, Grimké participated in the creation of organizations such as the American Negro Academy, and there they nurtured and developed African Americans. He also set a firestorm in 1923. This was quite interesting to me. You might want to look this up. But in 1923, Grimké was invited to the Howard University School of Religion to give the convocation address. And in that convocation address, the title of his address was, "What is the trouble with Christianity today?" In this particular sermon, he denounced such groups. Think about this. Think about this in 1923. He denounced openly groups like the YMCA and the Federation of White Churches, and he actually challenged these people who professed to be Christians that how could they be fighting for their rights and their liberties while at the same time having people as slaves and fighting for that particular right. So that was quite interesting. But Grimké's pulpit ministry was quite rare. The members of his congregations They weekly, listen to what they expected of their pastor. They expected of him to give sermons that address issues of faith, of morals, with an ethical insight, literary grace, and it was said that he preached with a prophetic zeal. Francis Grimké not only preached a good sermon, but he lived a good sermon. Lived it so well that they began to call him the Black Puritan. Francis J. Grimké was the real deal. Now, quickly, there was so much I learned about him, so much I wanted to get into, but again, I won't. I'm sure you just heard that latte, whatever they make, just being made. So I just want to talk about two things real quickly. Again, I told you he had a balanced ministry. He really focused on the development of men and women, and also he spoke out against injustices wherever they came about. In 1904, Francis Grimké preached several sermons from January over into February on the subject of the ideal woman. But around the second sermon, he went off and began to talk about what does a true religious man look like. Quickly, here's what he said. A true religious man is one who has a living faith in the reality of God. Listen to this. Grimké preached that one of the things that particularly impresses one in reading the Old Testament is the reality of God to the patriarchs and to the prophets. He said that they go to him with everything. They speak to him as one man speaks to another. He is just as real to them as they are to each other. There I stopped, and I actually considered my relationship with God, because that's the reality that we have to have with our God. Again, go to the blog. There's another post about how he had an interaction with a woman as he preached over several weeks about who the ideal woman was and the interaction that he had with a woman who came up to him afterwards. But let me quickly move on. Again, this balanced ministry, because like I said, he also dealt with the injustice that people dealt with every day on a daily basis. March 7, 1909, Grimké gave a bold sermon that was entitled Equality of Right for All Citizens. Listen to this, black and white alike. This particular sermon was pointed into the direction of those southern states who were bitter because they were defeated and they were fighting against the Union. Here's what Grimké said. The secession of the southern states in 1860 was a small matter with the secession of the Union itself from the great principles enunciated in the Declaration of Independence, in the Golden Rule, in the Ten Commandments, in the Sermon on the Mount. Listen, people, unless we hold firmly to these great fundamental principles of righteousness, of social, political, and economic wisdom, our union, as Mr. Garrison expressed it, will be only a covenant with death and an agreement with hell. If it continues to exist, it will be a curse and not a blessing. I thought that was a great word for our nation today. And I want to close with this. And I hope this video was clear. I hope you can hear well. Hope it's not too much background. But I want this that I closed with, I thought was very, very important, because there's so much you can learn from the life and the ministry of Francis J. Grimké. He encouraged you to be bold in your faith and be bold in your life as you serve God. Here's the last quote that I found from him that I want to leave with this video. It is only what is written upon the soul of man that will survive the wreck of time. Is that not fitting for 2017? Listen to what Francis J. Grimké said. It is only what is written upon the soul of man that will survive the wreck of time. And in 2017, the way people are going crazy, how relevant is this statement? It is only what is written upon the soul of man that will survive the wreck of time. Today's Reformation profile of an African American is Francis J. Grimké, who was known as the Minister of Justice. He was known as the Black Puritan. Blessings to you. Again, go to timeforreformation.com. That's time, the number 4, reformation.com, where I have a little bit more written up. You can read a little bit more about him, and I pray that his ministry and his life will be an encouragement and a blessing to you. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Reformation Profiles on this 2nd day of February in 2017. May God bless you. Francis J. Grimké.